Why told you the greatest threat to America was war? They lied. The most dangerous weapon isn't a missile, it's collapse. Silent, invisible, a slow strangulation of an empire from within. Imagine waking up one morning to find your dollars worth less than scraps, your savings erased overnight, and the world no longer caring whether America rises or falls. That's not science fiction. That's the game already being played, and the real question isn't if America crashes, it's who profits when it does. You see, every empire in history has fallen. Rome, Persia, Spain, Britain, and every fall left vultures circling above, feeding on the carcass of a once great power. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. America's potential collapse isn't just inevitable, it's being engineered. Debt piled to the heavens, endless printing of dollars, a financial system stretched like glass about to shatter. This isn't an accident, it's a trap, and the predators waiting to strike, they already know the moment is near. China, hoarding gold, locking down rare earth minerals, preparing the petro-yuan as a replacement for the dollar. Russia, fueling the energy wars, bleeding the West with conflicts designed to weaken its treasury. And shadow players, hedge funds, bankers, corporations that thrive on chaos. When markets burn, they grow fat. When economies bleed, they buy power for pennies on the dollar. Ask yourself, if the dollar stops being the world's currency tomorrow, who wins? Not you. Not the worker saving every paycheck. Not the soldier risking his life abroad. The winners will be the ones who design the collapse, who plan for it decades in advance, and who know exactly where the wealth will flow when the United States staggers. What you're about to hear is dangerous, because once you see who profits if America falls, you'll never look at the flag, the banks, or the markets the same way again. This is not about predicting a crash. It's about exposing the blueprint of control and showing you the hands already waiting to pull the trigger.
The headlines scream about wars, elections, and scandals, but the real war is silent. It's economic. And at the center of this chessboard sits China, holding the pieces America doesn't even see. For decades, the United States controlled the world through the dollar. Every barrel of oil traded, every shipment of goods, every global loan carried that green paper stamped with Washington's power. But today, China has been building an alternative. While America buries itself in debt, Beijing has been stacking gold reserves, buying mines, and tightening its grip on the most critical resources of the modern age, rare earth elements. These are not just minerals, they are the lifeblood of every smartphone, missile, fighter jet, and battery. Without them, America's technological dominance shatters. And who controls over 70% of their global production? China. Now imagine this, the moment the dollar weakens, Beijing steps forward with the petro-yuan, a currency backed by oil, supported by Saudi Arabia, and stabilized by gold, a direct rival to the dollar's throne. And the Saudis, once America's closest partners, are already whispering with China, signing deals that bypass Washington. Its betrayal hidden behind handshakes. But it's not just China. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa is expanding. They're building their own financial systems, their own payment networks, their own global banks. Why? Because they know the empire is wobbling. And when America stumbles, they'll be ready to offer the world a new leader. Think about it. If oil no longer requires the dollar, if rare earths are cut off, if emerging nations can trade outside of U.S. control, what happens? The collapse of the dollar won't just be an American disaster. It will be the greatest wealth transfer in history, shifting power from Washington to Beijing, from Wall Street to Shanghai. This isn't paranoia, it's preparation. And while Americans argue over politics, while the news distracts you with noise, the rest of the world is quietly positioning itself to profit from the fall of the empire. If you think the crash would only hurt the US, you're wrong. For China and its allies, it's the jackpot they've been waiting for.
Now, here's the truth they'll never say on the evening news. Collapse is not just random, and it's not just foreign enemies waiting in the shadows. It's a partnership, a hidden handshake between global elites and rival nations. Because in chaos, alliances form that the public would never accept in daylight. Think about it. China hoards gold and builds new trade routes. Hedge funds prepare to short the dollar. Saudi Arabia whispers with Beijing about selling oil in yuan. Meanwhile, American bankers quietly move their assets offshore, hedging against the very collapse they've created. Separate moves, yes, but all flowing toward the same outcome, the weakening of America and the transfer of wealth and power to those who orchestrated the fall. This isn't conspiracy, it's strategy. Nations don't hate each other the way the media tells you. Elites don't care about flags, borders, or patriotism. They care about one thing: control. And if America falls, the vacuum of power doesn't remain empty. It's filled by those who were already preparing, already aligned, already positioned to profit while the ordinary citizen is crushed under inflation, debt, and despair. Here's the part you need to understand. You were never meant to see this. You were meant to believe collapse is a natural disaster, something nobody could predict. But now you see it for what it is, a staged transfer, a designed downfall. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I want you to do something right now, to lock this truth into your mind, to burn it into your identity, so you'll never be fooled again. Go to the comments and type this phrase not once, but twice. I see the game board. Write it twice. Because once you declare that, you're no longer just a spectator. You're someone who sees the hidden moves, someone who refuses to play the pawn in their empire of lies. The world is entering a dangerous new phase. America's fall is not the end of history, it's the reset. And those who profit are already circling. The only question left is, will you be blind to it, or will you see the game board clearly before the next move is played?
Power is not only taken with money and weapons, it is manufactured inside your head. The most efficient empires in history didn't just conquer land, they conquered belief. Today, the manufacturer of consent wears a suit, speaks in soothing tones on television, and runs on algorithms that learn how to keep you just anxious enough to buy, but never awake enough to act. Start with the media. Headlines are designed rhythms, not accidents. Fear sells better than calm. A market wobble becomes a drama overnight, pundits amplify worst-case scenarios, anchors frame panic as inevitability, and attention follows the loudest voice. While your heart races, the real conversations about ownership of assets, about who actually controls liquidity and credit, are quietly removed to closed rooms. The public sees the spectacle, the players trade the spoils. Then look at education and finance literacy. Schools teach math, history, civics, but not the ledger that rules modern life. How money is created, who benefits from debt, how interest compounds transfer of wealth upward. Ignorance is not an oversight, it's a design feature. A population that doesn't understand leverage is a population that will hand over its future in exchange for immediate comfort. Consumer credit becomes normalized. Mortgages, student loans, and endless credit cycles keep generations in motion but not in power. Algorithms are the new gatekeepers. Social platforms track your fears and feed them back with more precision than any sermon. If a story about inflation spikes attention, the algorithm multiplies it. If a narrative keeps you angry and divided, it keeps you scrolling. Division fragments solidarity. Fragmented people cannot organize to question the structures that profit from their anxiety. Manufactured scarcity, a shortage here, a ration luxury there, is amplified until people accept tighter controls as necessary sacrifices. Behavioral economics and targeted advertising complete the loop. Companies and political machines use your psychology against you. Micro-targeted ads that push consumption, headlines that stoke outrage, solutions that are really subscriptions to dependence. The result is a society that votes with clicks and buys with fear, while the architects of collapse measure engagement and smile. This is not a story of helplessness. It's a manual of mechanisms. Once you know the levers, media noise, educational gaps, algorithmic reinforcement, and psychological manipulation, you can begin to disengage. Reduce the input that programs you. Learn the language of money. Question the narratives that come packaged as consensus. The more you resist the manufactured frame, the less effective their collapse as opportunity model becomes. Because the truth is simple. Control that starts in your mind ends in your pocket. And the first act of freedom is recognizing the theater for what it is. When an empire collapses, the ruins never stay empty for long. Someone always rushes to claim the throne, the markets, and the influence left behind. If the US economy truly falters, who would profit the most from America's downfall? First, China. For decades, Beijing has played the long game, silently building its industrial power, tightening its grip on rare earth minerals, and expanding its reach through the Belt and Road Initiative. If the dollar collapses, China's petro-yuan and digital currency could become the new lifeline for global trade. Imagine a world where oil deals are no longer written in dollars, but in yuan, a quiet coup against the very foundation of US power. Next, Russia. Often underestimated, Moscow thrives on chaos. When Western systems stumble, energy prices spike and Russia, sitting on vast oil and gas reserves, cashes in. A weaker dollar means stronger leverage for Moscow and Europe, where nations already struggle to balance reliance on Russian fuel with political loyalty to Washington. Then comes the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia. For decades, the kingdom has been America's silent partner in the petrodollar pact. But recent whispers of oil contracts priced in yuan suggest betrayal may be closer than many believe. If Riyadh shifts loyalty, America's financial empire could lose its core pillar overnight, while Saudi elites deepen ties with China and other rising powers. And don't forget Europe. The EU might present itself as America's ally, but in crisis, Brussels will act to preserve its own financial dominance. The euro could position itself as a stable alternative, especially if Washington's instability sparks panic. Old rivalries don't die, they just wait. Finally, the global elites themselves, the shadow networks of investors, hedge funds, and multinational corporations. They don't care which flag flies over global trade as long as they can profit from the shift. These players have already diversified into gold, digital assets, and foreign markets. When America crashes, they'll simply move their capital and declare victory. So, the question isn't whether the world will adjust to America's fall, it's who is preparing to seize the spoils right now. Because in the brutal game of global finance, one empire's collapse is another's. Golden Age.
For all the talk of nations, empires, and shadowy elites, one truth remains: when financial earthquakes strike, it is never the powerful who feel the first shock. It is ordinary people, the workers, the families, the savers who are crushed under the rubble. If America truly crashes, what does that mean for you, for the millions who depend on the stability of the dollar, and for the billions who orbit around its gravitational pull? Picture this: savings accounts wiped out overnight as inflation devours the value of every dollar, retirement funds evaporating as Wall Street's too big to fail giants tumble, everyday goods from food to fuel doubling in price within weeks, as imports no longer flow under the safety of US credit. The middle class, already fragile, would shatter like glass, while the ultra-wealthy shield themselves in offshore havens and hard assets. It's not just an American nightmare. The shockwaves would ripple outward. Nations holding trillions in US debt, Japan, China, European banks would scramble to protect themselves, cutting deals in new currencies. Global trade could fracture into competing blocs, where loyalty to Washington is no longer rewarded, but punished. This is how financial wars turn into political wars, and political wars into real ones. For ordinary people worldwide, the collapse of the US dollar would feel like the ground itself giving way, jobs lost, currencies devalued, and a creeping uncertainty about what comes next. And when the dust settles, the question will not be how did this happen, but rather, who already knew and who quietly prepared. Because make no mistake, the elites, the hedge funds, the power brokers, they're already positioned. They will emerge from the chaos richer than ever, having turned collapse into opportunity. But for the rest, the reckoning will be harsh. History shows us, empires fall not with a scream, but with a silent transfer of wealth from the many to the few. And so, the ultimate question remains: if America crashes tomorrow, who will rise? Who will profit? And who will be left to pay the price?